Right, let's jump over to the UFC. We have a fight night, Holm versus Ketlen Vieira. As I said before, it's not the deepest fight night we've had. It's one of the lesser ones in a little while here. So we'll hop into some of these for you. But before we do, Omar, you got any ones lower on the card that you want to highlight?
Yes. Yes, I do. Probably more so fighters than whole fights necessarily.
Yep. Yep.
Um, one of Mark's favorite fighters, Chase Hooper, is fighting is fighting on this card. I'm still sort of like up in the air. Chase Hooper is a fun personality, but his fighting hasn't really backed it up entirely. He's got very interesting ground game, but his striking is kind of hot garbage. But it's so bad that there's no way it could get worse. It can only get better. So I'm hoping to see some improvements, going forward. But I guess we'll see what that's about. Jonathan Martinez is also actually a really good time for those of you who can fight. Win or loss, that kid's usually in a banger. So the fight against Vince Morales should be really fun. Those are really the two that I'm spotlighting for this card, apart from the ones we're about to talk about.
Yeah, I don't love much. I was going to spotlight Martinez myself. I do like him. I thought he looked really good against Alejandro Perez in his last fight.
Yep.
Morales is like kind of a dangerous finisher, but I think Martinez is probably going to be the better martial artist. But we will see. I like that fight.
Yep.
All right. With that said, let's hop into some of these. We will start with Parker Porter welcoming Jailton Almeida to the heavyweight division. It's not actually a move up there for Jailton Almeida. It's that he was supposed to be fighting Maxim Grishin. Grishin fell out of the fight. The man who raised his hand was Parker Porter. He said, "Hey, come fight me at heavyweight." And Jailton Almeida said, "Sure thing." So here we are. I guess if I'm presenting the fights, I will give you the odds when I bring them up. So the odds on this one, despite the move up, Jailton Almeida is still minus 600, and Parker Porter is plus 450 the other way.
Oh.
What you think?
I mean, it sounds like they don't want anybody to put any money on Almeida, like at all. I mean, the reality is Almeida has a reputation, and he has a reputation of being able to choke a bitch. And Parker Porter, for as tough as that guy is, and he's a gritty fighter, he's a tough fighter. He's gonna spend, I would imagine, a majority of this fight trying not to get submitted rather than being able to actually do anything to Jailton Almeida. At heavyweight, things can take a turn real quick, so you never know. Yep. But all things are kind of leading to Almeida finding a way to take his neck home with him. So I'll go with Almeida by submission, round one.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's crazy that Almeida is so big for 205 that he's coming up to heavyweight here, and he's still going to have a 3-inch height and 4-inch reach advantage on Parker Porter. Granted, Parker Porter is the way bigger guy. He comes in at the limit. Almeida, I imagine, will maybe get up to like 225, 230. Supposedly, he does have big weight cuts to light heavyweight, so I'm curious to see what he comes in at. But I just think Almeida is so much more skilled as the betting line suggests. Porter has won 3 in a row, but I've never been terribly impressed by him in any of them, really, to be honest. And Jailton kind of looks like a can't-miss killer. We called him the Brazilian Khabib after his debut. And I think the Brazilian Khabib, you would hope, is enough to take out Parker Porter, despite the weight difference. So I'll say he comes out aggressive. I'll say he looks fresh, not having to make that supposedly big cut he makes to 205. And I think he puts it on Porter. Porter's tough, so maybe he hangs around, but I'll say second round sub.
Nice. Next on the list, Eric Anders versus Jean-Young Park. What do you got for the line for that one?
So Park is the favorite here. He's minus 210. Anders is plus 170 as the dog. Eric Anders is a well-rounded, fundamental fighter. And sometimes that's a compliment, and sometimes that's a knock. And in this case, I just don't think that's going to be enough. I think Park is quicker. I think he's the more dangerous striker. He's tough to control, as we saw in his last fight with Gregory Rodriguez. Granted, he lost the fight, but it was because of striking, not because of any control. Park did a good job to escape everything in that one. So I think it's going to be tough for Anders to kind of do that grind out type of win that he has done to some people. Anders is durable, so I think he sees the bell, but I think Park is going to be feeding him a variety of shots, and I will say he wins AUD. What do you think?
Yeah, Eric Anders confuses me, man.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
he's a real puzzle because there are some times where he goes in there and he like looks like a striker, and then there are times where he goes in there and he acts like he's a wrestler right out of Penn State, like trying to just go on the legs the whole time. You know what I mean? Not really trying to fight, but just consistently trying to get that takedown. Consistent.
Yep.
And I don't know if these are game plans.
I was just going to say he's not a flowy fighter. He feels very game planny.
Yeah, and there doesn't really seem to be a lot of adjustments. And the problem with being so game plan heavy is that game plans need to be adjusted on the fly. If something doesn't go right, or if something isn't going according to plan based on somebody, your opponent doing something or not doing something for that matter, then, you've got to make those adjustments on the fly. And Eric Anders hasn't really shown that ability to do that. And I think that's where a lot of his losses come into play, because a lot of his losses, he's not usually, but he does have moments where he's winning those fights.
Yeah, I agree.
And then somewhere along the line, he just is not anymore. And it's really frustrating because, like, I'm an Eric Anders fan. Like, I enjoy watching him fight. I enjoy listening to him talk. But he has a real problem of, like, getting the job done when he's in there. He has good moments and whatever, but he can't close out the night properly. And it's frustrating to watch. Park, on the other hand, is, he's had his fights in the UFC. He's won his decisions in the UFC. He knows how to win. He lost his last fight. He ended up getting caught in a striking in a barrage of strikes. But the reality is the kid, he knows how to win a decision. He knows what it takes to get there. And I would imagine he has the ability to stop Eric Anders' game no matter really where it goes. Happy to be wrong, but I think that Park wins a unanimous decision.
Plus, his nickname is the Iron Turtle. So, like, come on. Got to pick that guy. All right, let's move right along. Next one is Chidi Njokuani versus Dushko Todorovic. Todorovic is the dog here, plus 190. Chidi comes in at minus 230. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it here before, man. I was a big fan of his older brother when I was first starting to watch MMA. I liked his last fight. I'm pretty sure he murdered the guy in his last fight.
Yes.
And I think he's a killer, man. I think, I would imagine his brother's experience in this game early had to have put him almost, steps ahead of other people. Very similar to how, I can't remember his name. The guy that just lost to Pitbull after beating him.
McKee? AJ McKee?
Yes. How AJ McKee's father kind of came up in the ranks and kind of in relatively the OG world, was never champion himself or anything crazy like that in the UFC, but was able to kind of use his experience, use his knowledge to jump and launch his son farther than he was able ever to get. And it feels very similar with Chidi now and his older brother. So excited to see Chidi win. I'm going to go first round KO.
I am too. I think this is another knockout for Chidi. He's longer, he's quicker, he hits harder. He's more battle tested at the highest levels. For those who may not know, you look at his resume, the guy's been around before he made it to the UFC. Like, he's fought some guys. He beat Max Griffin, who obviously is established in the UFC now. Granted, some of these wins were at welterweight. He's now up at middleweight. He's gotten bigger. But, yeah, he's a battle-tested guy. And Dushko has shown that he is there to be hit in his fights. He kind of leaves his chin out there a bit at times. He's not a great wrestler for it to be enough to change the fight, and I think he's going to eat a big shot. So I will say Chidi wins round 1 knockout.
Yeah. And one other one another person he's knocked out that we've talked highly about multiple times on this podcast is Andre Fiallo. Andre Fiallo
yes.
continuously murders people in the UFC. Yep. He got slept by Chidi in under a minute in their fight.
Yeah.
So Chidi is no joke, man. No joke.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
What's next? Next on the list, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Michel Pereira, the fight of the button mashers. What is the line for this one?
So we get into the bit of higher level fights on this card now with the main and the co-main. This one is real tight. Pereira slight favorite minus 125. Pons is even money as the dog plus 100. It's a hard one to pick. If this matchup was made just one fight ago for each guy, I think I would have been picking Ponzinibbio with some confidence. But today, I think I'm picking Michel Pereira. I'm just not sure this fight is going to look terribly different from the fight that Pons just had with Jeff Neal. Like, he's still skilled. He's still tough as hell. He doesn't go away. But I think he can be outstruck at this point in his career. And I think Pereira is a guy who can do that to him. And as for Pereira, I would have said he's a guy who may gas and who may wilt late to like Santiago's pressure. But after his last fight against Fialho, I don't feel as worried about that either. So I feel like their two most recent fights have kind of changed my take on this fight. I don't know if I'm making too big of a swap just off one fight. But I'm leaning Pereira. He's tough. He can take a punch. So can Pons. So that's why I think we'll probably get a banger here. But I think Pereira can land on him from distance, land with more frequency, and win at least two of these rounds. So I will say Pereira UD.
I did not realize Fialho has already fought 3 times this year.
Yeah, dude, he's booked in June already in Singapore.
Crazy. This man is
fucking maniac.
Monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with your take. Ponzinibbio was out for a little while. I know he had, what did he have, knee injuries, leg injuries?
Dude, he had a lot. He was also sick with something. There was a lot of bad breaks that he had.
Yeah. And when he came back, you know, he hasn't looked like the killer that he was before he left. And he's dropped a couple of those fights. The Miguel Baeza one almost seems like, you know, everybody's been killing Miguel Baeza, and he barely got through the Miguel Baeza fight.
Oh, so that hurt you to say.
It did. It wasn't great. So I agree. I at this point, in order for me to believe Ponzinibbio has what it takes to win, he'd have to show it, because there's nothing of recent value that I can take away to say that he's going to beat Michel Pereira. Whereas Michel has made significant leaps and bounds in his game, being able to control the craziness, the unnecessary fucking 540 spins and the backflips and all this other nonsense that like just makes him gassed by the beginning of the second round.
Yep.
With nothing having gotten done. He's really been able to rein it in and really been able to put on some fantastic performances, even talking a little shit here and there. It's you know, he's been fun to watch and effective, most importantly. So I'm going to go with Michel Pereira. I do think that Ponzinibbio lasts, like you said. I don't think he gets knocked out. But I do think it's a unanimous decision and not a close one.
All right, let's close this out. We go to the main event. Holly Holm returning after a year and 7 months out of action. She is taking on Ketlen Vieira. Holm is the favorite here. She's minus 250. Vieira is a plus 200 dog. What do you think?
I gotta say, man, I still like Holly Holm. Holly Holm is, if nothing else, the queen of technique. That woman is basically a textbook personified. Everything she does is as technically perfect as it can be. You know, she's had her blemishes here and there, but the reality is that the girl is very, very good at everything that she does. She is very well-rounded, especially on the ground, especially considering the fact that she was a boxer before all this MMA stuff.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, and she's a very decent wrestler, man. Yeah. You know, her ground game is legit as fuck. Yep. Ketlen Vieira, though, she's got hands. You know, she's definitely got some hands. The thing that I don't trust about her, though, is her well-roundedness, her ability to actually adapt to different situations as they occur throughout the fight. Holly Holm is probably one of the best when it comes to adapting. If something isn't going right, she will figure out another strategy to get around whatever the obstacle is. And I think we're going to see a real difference in experience, and a real difference in the approach to how that fight's going to go. And I think Holly Holm is going to end up winning this fight, but I do think it'll be a decision, a 5-round decision. But I do think it'll be a dominant one from Holly Holm.
Well, you can tell we don't create any fake disagreement first take style on this show because we have agreed on all 5 fights that we have previewed, and we agree again. As I said, she's been out for a year and 7 months. She's 40 years old. It gives me some pause, but I'm not about to pick Ketlen Vieira. She doesn't really do it for me, so Holly Holm it is. And honestly, there's no reason to pick against Holly and assume that a fall off is happening until we actually see a fall off. Like, she still looks fantastic.
I was gonna say, there is no fall off. The people that she's lost to are all champions for the most part.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
All champions. Even
Yep.
even Jermaine Durandamy at this point had a belt. So
it's valid. Yeah, she's much faster in foot speed and in hand speed. She has a lot more activity. Her pace is better. I trust her cardio more in a 5-rounder. And I just don't know what it is that Vieira can do to win this fight. Like, I don't see her being able to take down and hold down Holly Holm enough to work any kind of game there. And I just think Holly can control the fight. I think she can dictate it, and I think she can outpoint her in maybe every single round. As you said, I don't trust Vieira to adapt in fight and turn things up in ways that she has to. I don't like how she looked against Misha. I know she got the win. I don't know if I see a finish. I do think there were a lot of opportunities for Misha to land big on Vieira that she missed, and I think that Holly will find some of those. But I think I'm going to say it lasts, and it's just a dominant decision win for Holly Holm.
I expect Vieira's face to be fucked up by the end of that fight.
I kind of agree.
Like,
I kind
busted.
of agree.